I want to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Hassan El-Tayyab. Hassan is a very talented musician, and also he's a lobbyist on behalf of peace in the Middle East, specifically dealing with issues of Yemen on behalf of FCNL. And Hassan, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me. I love what you all are trying to accomplish here. This is great. It was great to hear everybody. Norman, I have a lot of respect for you and what you do. And I used to live with Sam Husseini, actually. So I want to talk about Yemen. There have been some major foreign policy changes happening in the past couple weeks. 2 weeks ago, the Biden administration basically started to announce that we're going to end U.S. support for offensive operations in the Saudi-UAE-led war in Yemen. This is a result of tens of thousands of activists around the country led by Yemeni Americans trying to end U.S. complicity in the world's worst humanitarian crisis on the planet that has pushed 16 million people to the brink of famine. There was a UN report just this week that said 6.5 million children are living one step away from starvation. It's absolutely horrendous. The U.S. has been involved since the start of the war by supplying weapons, logistical support, intel sharing, spare parts transfers, maintenance, possibly complicity in the blockade as well, which is cutting off the flow of food, fuel, medicine, and clean water. So we've got a lot of work to do. We passed the Yemen War Powers Resolution, and the activists around the country have brought us to this point. Now we have to really look at what's happened and what we think should happen, and they haven't really clarified. So they said offensive weapons. So we really still have to push members of Congress to get answers about what does that entail? Does that include spare parts transfers? Does that include any participation in the blockade? Which weapon systems are offensive? Which will be classified as defensive? So there's an effort in Congress. I'm going to be action oriented here because I feel like there's no time to lose. Yemen can't wait. Letting your members know that you want, full end to U.S. support for the war and some pressure from your member onto the Biden administration to get these answers. We're working with Ro Khanna right now on a letter clarifying some of that, and hopefully we'll get some more info there. Now, another thing that we're trying to do is get a new UN Security Council resolution. And what happened at the beginning of the war, I guess I'm not sure. Should I? I don't want to give too much background. I feel like people here have been following the news. Seems like I don't feel like I need to start from the very beginning. But so in 2015, a UN Security Council resolution was basically pivoted and pointed right at the Houthis, and it was very unbalanced. It was totally in favor of the Hadi government. And so that's another part of the solution, I think, is to get a new UN Security Council resolution. Congress can press the U.S. ambassador to the UN to make that happen. I think that's really critical. I also think we should be pressing Congress to not just have an executive order, but to have a permanent end to U.S. military support via the NDAA and DoD approach. So I think that's going to be a fight coming up this summer. We'll be able to see that. But FCNL.org, we have lots of action links, and I encourage people to participate and let your member know that you care about the people of Yemen. Another thing we need is restore humanitarian funding to all parts of Yemen. In March of last year, at like the very start of the pandemic, when Yemen was at its most vulnerable because of the fact that all of these hospitals had been destroyed by Saudi airstrikes, we have this real opportunity here with Samantha Power to press her and make sure that she's going to do what she needs to do. She's going to be she's the USAID nominee for the Biden administration. We need to press her to make sure that she follows through and restores and expands humanitarian funding, and get Saudi Arabia and the UAE to pay their fair share, because they have billions of dollars of weapons, money, billions of dollars of capital to spend on weapons, but only a fraction of that to spend on the humanitarian aid. So I think it's just been an honor to work with folks like Norman Solomon and so many other folks around the country. Yemeni Alliance Committee has a Yemeni woman named Jahan Hakim. And so if you have not followed her, I definitely would. I don't know how many people listening here are in the Bay Area. I assume a lot. By the way, I really miss the Bay Area. I used to live there for a long time, and I love California. So follow her work. Aisha Juman, Yemen Relief and Reconstruction Foundation, is another really important organization doing humanitarian aid work in Yemen, and also doing amazing advocacy on the Hill and making sure that we end support for the war. And Shireen Al-Ademi, I would definitely have people follow her on Twitter. She's, So if it's all right, I'd like to talk a little bit about Iran, because I think that's another critical issue. And I appreciated what both Norman and Brett said about the sanctions. And Vahid, I appreciated what you said, and it was really touching that your family's in Iran. I have family in Jordan, and I worry about them too. And it's to have people that you love in these places that are being impacted so negatively by U.S. policy. It makes it really personal, and I think that's so important. And I will say that people that do have family in the Middle East, your voices are really needed in Capitol Hill right now, because they're not being represented. I'm telling you, I'm out here, I'm in these meetings. There's not enough voices from the Middle East making these really important decisions. So I encourage you to get to know your member of Congress, get to know your senators, and get your voice heard. So the Iran nuclear deal was, an amazing accomplishment for the Middle East, in my opinion. Negotiated under the Obama administration. A lot of those same people, like Blinken, Robert Malley, Jake Sullivan, and soon to be Wendy Sherman, were really integral in the original Iran nuclear deal. So there's some really positive things that the Biden administration has said, that they want to do a compliance for compliance return. Unfortunately, the thing that I will criticize right now is that they're not moving with the urgency that's necessary to lift sanctions on Iran. Iran has said on February 21, if we do not lift sanctions on that country, that they're going to kick out the Iran nuclear inspectors. And that is a big deal that will set back our ability to advance diplomacy. And so letting your members know that you want to return to the Iran nuclear deal. Luckily, Senator Markey from Massachusetts, he's getting, and others are getting ready to introduce some legislation to, call for, restoring of diplomacy with Iran. So I think that's critical that we, build support for a return. There are some people that say on the Hill that, okay, well, we didn't like the original Iran nuclear deal. We didn't like pulling out, but we don't like getting back in. I swear to God, there are some people that are saying that, and my message is the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, the 2015 a nuclear accord that changed history between the United States and Iran, is the best place to start. Start there and then build on that for follow-on negotiations. I mean, I think it's fine to admit that we want to address the full range of issues, like, support for the Houthis, support for Hezbollah, ballistic missiles, regional terrorism. We want to have those conversations, but you got to start with the Iran nuclear deal, and that's the message for people on the Hill right now. And we have to lift sanctions. Another thing that I think we should do is do some good faith efforts as well, because we messed up pretty majorly. We slapped sanctions that have crippled Iran's economy, destroyed their oil industry. cut off the flow of medicine during a global pandemic. Iranian nurses are dying at higher rates than other nurses around the world because they don't have access to PPE, testing kits, respirators, sanitizer, the vaccine. They're starting to get some vaccine, but it's been really difficult for this country. So I think we need a worldwide temporary general license to not only support Iran, but make sure that every single country on earth can get all of this critical care. The vaccine, testing kits, PPE, respirators. I think that would be a great first step. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is also looking at a $5 billion emergency loan. I think we got to also support that to make sure that, and we can process those transactions if folks are worried about giving $5 billion to Iran, like, the crates of cash. If they're worried about that, let's process it through Instex or the Swiss channel that was set up to do transactions. Anyway, I think we've got a lot of work to do. I want everyone to stay engaged on this, and you already are. It's been such a pleasure, and I looking forward to hearing everybody else.